Still, old friend, you've managed to kill just about everyone else, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target. I'm Liam, he's Rob, that's Dave, and welcome to Hey You Guys podcast. This week, with the help of our special guest, we will be looking back at what most considered to be the best Star Trek movie of them all, 1982 Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. With its sumptuous score, fantastic cinematography, brilliant set design, fine script, thematically rich narrative, and well, one of the most memorable and, dare I say, heartbreaking deaths in movie history, Star Trek II certainly does a lot right. But does it do enough in 2024 to win over those without a huge interest in Star Trek? Rob? And does it still hold up for fans of the movie 42 years after its original release? Dave and I. We have to start with Rob, because you're not a Star Trek guy traditionally. You've seen a few movies, is that correct?
I'm not going to tell you what I thought first. The first thing I'm going to say is I didn't realise it was at first. I couldn't remember her name. So when I saw the woman in a Kobayashi maroon, I just put down in my notes, it's Bruce Willis's mum.
Oh, from Look Who's Talking.
Look Who's Talking. Kirstie Alley. Bruce Willis's mum.
That's a weird one to go to. Yeah, and this film actually says introducing Kirstie Alley. So
yeah,
it can't be just I mean, yeah, but she was in Cheers before this, right?
Motion picture. I think it's one of her first motion pictures.
Oh, but yeah, it wasn't, because usually when I see like introducing, I think, oh, this is like they've been dragged out of the wilderness and plonked into this movie. But I thought maybe she'd been on TV before this. I might be wrong. I haven't actually checked IMDb, but
yeah, this isn't going to be a high scoring film for me. I'm not gonna slate it, but it was boring for a lot of it. I couldn't get on with the acting. The acting was wooden. What really felt like there was no danger. Absolutely no danger. It was so bright, and I don't know. It just felt like it was all just a whimsical thing into space. And every now and then, you had a space stripper on the other side of it, fucking Khan with his just chest hanging out. The dude from Fantasy Island. I just felt no danger or nothing about it.
Have you never watched Star Trek in your life?
I told you.
I mean, there's very rarely any major danger. I mean, they might get blown up, but there's never any impending sort of doom.
The Star Treks that I've watched have always been danger, like the 2009
It's
one.
modern, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
This is old Star Trek. This is when this is basically like Cold War in space. Lots of hype, but not loads going on.
I couldn't really connect with it, and
you say about the acting I love all the actors in it. Well, most of them. We'll get to that later. But it's very much 1960s acting in a 1980s film.
Yeah. And
you could tell, they're getting on a bit. They're still acting like they're in the 60s show. It's maybe a little pampered than normal, a little bit different. But I like them. I grew up watching them. So, to me, they're the original and the OG Enterprise crew.
Liam, you didn't watch it a lot as a kid, did you? But you said that you really enjoyed this film.
I love this film. It's one of those weird films, even though I don't have a massive attachment to the TV show. Obviously, I have an attachment to the characters because they're such a massive part of popular culture. But I actually wasn't crazy about this movie for a lot of the reasons that you've actually said when I was younger. I would have seen this in like the late 80s for the first time. It was obviously released in 1982. Even in 1982, the special effects weren't fantastic. And a lot of the decisions made in this film were down to budget constraints because motion picture just didn't do the numbers they wanted to and didn't get a great critical response. They were like, well, we're going to go back to the TV show very literally because this is a direct sequel to an episode from season 1, I think, isn't it?
It is, yes.
I'm not making that up. So it feels like an episode, and again, maybe that was the reason I didn't have that attachment to it when I was younger. And it is relatively slow, I guess you can say. But I can't think of many films that every time I watch it, I enjoy it more. And like another film that immediately pops in my mind is Royal Tenenbaums, a movie I liked. And then every time I've watched it again, I'm like, I just love this film more and more and more. And it's the same with this. It definitely has its faults. I'm not convinced, like the whole superior intellect thing. I mean, Jesus Christ. Khan is an idiot for most of this film, make no mistake. Yeah. Like it literally, his idiocy is borderline a plot device in this film. It's like, and the only reason you even think he's smart is because everyone keeps telling you. It's like he's got his whole crew indoctrinated. They're like, oh, they love his. So even though, is it Joachim is like number 2? It's like out of Austin Powers. He just keeps showing up with all these great ideas and gets completely undermined by fucking Dr. Evil in the seat with his chest hanging out, which is ridiculous. But it gets away with it because, and I know you're not the biggest fan of the acting. I don't think Shatner's ever been better than in this. I think he's absolutely exceptional. And everything Montalban says in this film is just, it's like it's being rolled off a piece of butter. Every line is just gold. I could have done any one of his lines for the introduction, but the problem is every time I try and do them, they come out Welsh for some reason. So even like the really hard. So from hell's heart I stab at thee, for hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee.
You have like to Martin Sheen, haven't you?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I've hurt you, and I wish to go on hurting you. It's like everything. Like I just can't help it. If I try and do his quotes, they come out Welsh.
He asked me.
I did like that line.
But all I could think of from that was Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realise that was from Wrath of Khan until I watched it yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those weird films. It's beloved by many, and like for me at least, it's like because my attachment with Star Trek is very much to the movies rather than to the TV show. So for me, Nicholas Meyer, the director of this film, is to Star Trek what like Martin Campbell is to James Bond. Because I have a similar relationship there where I didn't grow up watching James Bond films. I got in, with to an extent Timothy Dalton, but for our generation, it really was GoldenEye. And Martin Campbell directed GoldenEye and then came back to reinvent the series again for Casino Royale. And they're unequivocally my two favorite James Bond films. And it's the same with this. He came in to basically save the day after what happened with the motion picture to make Wrath of Khan, to get the fans back on board, to have that attachment to the old TV show. And then he came back in 1991 for Undiscovered Country, which is probably my second favorite Star Trek film. I mean, I'm not sure about you, and obviously, Rob, I don't mean to leave you out of the conversation, but do you have, like, as a Star Trek fan, Dave, do you have, like, a list of your favorite Star Trek films? Because I know a lot of people talk about First Contact, but for me, it's probably this, Undiscovered Country, and I'd probably say 2009 Star Trek, which I know, obviously, Rob's a fan of as well.
Fan of the new ones, but I think, other than Wrath of Khan, I would say The Return to Earth.
Oh, if Rob is upset by this film by saying there's no threat, he should absolutely watch The Voyage Home, Star Trek 4. Where there is there's no battles, there's no confrontation. No. They just go back to the 80s. There's hijinks. It's a comedy.
It is a comedy, isn't it?
Well, these are seen as the dark ones. Like Wrath of Khan and The Search for Spock are seen as the dark ones. And then to counteract those, you get the light-hearted Voyage Home, which is a great, somewhat zany, ridiculous film. It's fun,
and
but
that's the
it's
thing.
no Wrath of Khan.
I don't know why I like it so much, but
everyone does.
For Star Trek, I love that.
I'll tell you something. Right? If you're saying that this is the, and I don't remember. I just remember there was whales in number 4. But if you're saying that this is the best
everyone remembers that.
Yeah. If you're saying this is the best one, then I'm done. I won't be watching the others. Like, there's no way. Like, you're saying this saved it. I really think this was like the nail in the coffin of Star Trek, because it didn't grab me at all. What I did like was finally there was an actor who was older than us now. Like Shatner's 52, he's meant to be older than us. And usually he's usually when we're watching somebody who's 40 who looks 70, they're 42 or they're 35 or something. So I was really pleased he was older than me.
Well, Bones is like 60, isn't he?
Oh, fucking Bones! Why didn't he fucking die?
He's miserable in everything.
Yeah, but he's such a cunt.
Yeah, but that's his shtick, though. I mean,
and his shtick is he should have died. And speaking of dying, I'm jumping straight to the end. Wilson, Spock, they only have 3 minutes, and Spock was in no rush to get to that chamber. They had 3 minutes. He gently goes down the ladder, goes down another ladder, walks along.
He's a Klingon.
Yeah, but they got 3 minutes.
Not Klingon, Vulcan, sorry.
But they got 3 minutes. And then they've saved the day, everything, and they tell fucking Kirk to get down here because, well, they haven't even told him why. And Kirk slides down that ladder like he's a fucking fireman.
My God, yes, but that's the point, isn't it? Logically, you don't rush to something. You do it properly.
Okay,
you do it once.
Logically, 3 minutes. 3 minutes is not going to change because it's logically. It's 3 minutes. You know, he did a lot in 3 minutes. Pinched Bones' neck. He caressed his face. He fucking stole.
Told him to remember.
Stole Spock's gloves. What was he meant to remember, by the way, Bones?
He has his memories and stuff for the next film, doesn't he? So he can remember parts of his like. So that's the Vulcan mind meld.
Okay.
Because this is like a secret. I mean, I actually think it's a perfect example of like not putting the cart in front of the horse. Like, this works as part of, obviously, as we mentioned, it almost seen as 3 movies. This, The Search for Spock, and The Voyage Home. But if the movie just ended with this one, it would have been fine. But it does enough to kind of set up the following sequels. But it's never like it's one of the issues with modern day movies. Too many of them, you watch 80% of the movie, which is just setting up the next movie. This film doesn't do that. It quietly sets up the other movies, but never at the cost of the pacing or the entertainment. And I know I'm speaking to Dave here and not to Rob, but it's inexplicably that you're once again, for the second time in 3 weeks, going after a beloved finale to a film. Like, there's one thing going after E.T., saying goodbye to Elliot, going after Spock's death in fucking Star Trek 2. I mean, Jesus Christ. It's such a great sequence. I mean, I know you're famous.
Sorry, before you go on, sorry.
Too, but sorry,
before you, that kind of made no sense where you said to remember because it's for his memories and so they could save him in the next one. Because Spock didn't even, or Leonard Nimoy didn't even know there was a next one.
It's not so they could save him. It's just for him to remember him. I can't remember the exact reason why he does it.
Because touching facts a little bit, Leonard Nimoy didn't know he was coming back. He didn't know about that end scene where you see the coffin on the planet, and he saw it when he saw the premiere, and he said to somebody mid watching, he said, "Oh, I'm going to get a call from Paramount soon, aren't I?" Like, he didn't know he was coming back.
Yeah, because
he wasn't going to sign up for this film. He was initially said he wasn't going to come back for this movie until basically similar to Harrison Ford and Han Solo coming back. He was like, I'll only come back if I'm like basically on this idea that he was going to get a great send off, and it is a great send off. I mean, I know you have your issues with that. I think the finale is one of the few movies that genuinely kind of I have an emotional attachment to for the end of the film, but it's strange that. When so many people, you think of this film and you think of the finale between Spock and Kirk and their relationship and everything that comes with it. And don't get me wrong, their few scenes on screen together are fantastic in this film. The dialogue's beautifully written. Everything's kind of got a layer of attachment and history. Every line, there's certainly plenty of foreboding when you know the way it goes towards the end of the film, of course. But when you go back and watch this film, Spock doesn't actually have much to do until that final moment. It's like, this is a movie about relationships. This really is Kirk's movie, make no mistake. And it's about his relationship with Khan. It's about his relationship with Carol. It's about his relationship with David and his relationship with Spock. 3 of those get incredibly short shrift, though. There is hints at that relationship having history with Carol. There's the stuff with his son, David, which I don't think really works in this film. I actually think it's the weakest
David's
element.
a dick as well.
And the stuff with Spock...
So much.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan, David. The stuff with Spock eventually kind of works out because they have an amazing total bro death as well. You have and always will be my friend. It's like the ultimate bro death. But then, because everything's about him and Khan.
I think you've given me not enough credit because I haven't gone after the end. I haven't gone after his death. I think his death is great and I think it has an impact. Mm-hmm. I've gone after the build
up to it. Fair
it's
enough.
Fucking 3 minutes. And he stopped for a fucking coffee.
Mm-hmm.
He just had a chat with people while he went down. Oh, I'm going to go to my death now. That wasn't for me. But going back, because again, not a clue about any of this, the Wrath of Khan. I didn't know that there was an introduction of Khan. But you said there was. It was, and you both said, so you watched.
Yeah, so I've watched pretty much all the series of Star Trek from The Next Generation onwards, but I never really watched the original show. So I thought, I'm going to go back, I'm going to watch this one episode and see if there's a little bit of background. Because, again, that's one thing this film doesn't really do, is explain anything about him other than the fact that he was dropped on a planet. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, you haven't even get the bit with Chekhov. They try and build up that history with literally Chekhov showing up on that, on the, what is it? It's like a freighter, it's like a crate. And he's SS Botany Bay. SS Botany Bay. And that's it. It's like, oh no, we're all scared of the SS Botany Bay for some reason.
Which ironic.
Obviously.
Chekhov never actually met him in the show.
Did he not?
No, Chekhov wasn't in the first series, or at least he wasn't in the first part of it. So he never actually met him. So...
As
a bit of fan make do, they said, well, he probably was there in the background somewhere, so you must have seen him.
Yeah, and
that'll work.
Yeah, because but they made a big deal of it because Khan was going, never forget a face. You're Chekhov.
Yeah,
hang on now.
But the whole thing with Khan, it stems back to the 1990s, right? So people in the 60s believed that in the 1990s. We would be genetically engineered freaks that are able to lift cars above their heads and be super smart.
Is this a star date or is this a normal
thing? This is actually the 1990s. So that's when the eugenics war was set. So he was part of what were known as supermen. So there was a group of these genetically engineered people. They took over parts of the world. So Khan himself, and let me find my little notes here. He was a genetically engineered superhuman. He was in charge of most of Asia and the Middle East between 1992 and 1996. He was generally a peaceful hand, though. So he wasn't actually a warmonger. He wasn't as crazy as he sort of made out to be now. But the genetic engineering was outlawed, and they were hounded off Earth. And up to 84 of them ended up on the Botany Bay, which was sleeper ships. So they didn't have, well, of course, it was 1990. They didn't have starships or anything, but they had this gigantic ship in space. So again, thinking 30 years in the future, we were going to have these gigantic spaceships, which never.
Well, that's one of, I mean, when you look back through movie history and you go to like, Blade Runner, I mean, that's set in the past now. 2001, A Space Odyssey, they've all got these examples. But you've got to think a lot of these things were, again, coming from the perspective of the 60s. So in 1969, the human race is going to the moon in a tin can, ostensibly. Like, oh, well, if we keep going down this route, we'll go to Mars, we'll go beyond. Everyone just assumes that by like the 21st century, we'll be up to all sorts. But the fact is, once the Cold War ended, all the gas went out of there. It was just like, well, we don't need to push forward with space exploration anymore. So it just kind of died a death to one extent or another. Without the funding, it just doesn't happen. But you can understand why people in the 60s would have been like, oh God, if we're flying around in fucking Concords and going to the moon now, what's it going to be like in 30, 40 years? It's going to be unbelievable. Turns out the planes are worse. And we haven't been back to the moon. It's fucking garbage.
Can't smoke on the plane. What's going on?
So
I know, it's absolute shambles.
Cryogenically frozen.
Yeah, so the idea is it's a sleeper ship. So you get cryogenically frozen. They were going to go to a nearby planet. But the ship got lost, drifted off into space. And then the Enterprise find them in 2020. Oh, Jesus Christ. 2267.
Okay.
So
Just do the American version, 2267.
2267. So they find them. They don't know what's on there. They can find linked heartbeats. So they go down, take them off. They then bring on what I can only describe as an incredibly blacked up Khan onto the ship. He's supposed to be Asian. So he is. They refer to him as possibly Sikh. So he's got long black hair.
Well, he does have, his name is
very
Khan
brown.
Noonien Singh, isn't it? Yeah.
So did they went a little bit breakfast at Tiffany's, did they?
I mean, don't get me wrong. They wouldn't be dressing him up like that today.
No.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't really in the
But he's
film,
Mexican, isn't he? In real life.
Yeah, they didn't really in the film.
Well, they've obviously paid it back for the film as well.
He felt more Latino in the film.
But he is. He's
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. So, but they went Latino-ish. Like he had the Latino-ish tan kind of thing.
Yeah. So they don't know anything about him. They just know that
he's been on that sand planet.
So they don't. No. He's been on the ship, floating in space. So he's just
back to the episode.
back to the episode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, I was talking about the movie. I do apologize.
So they bring him onto the Enterprise. He's a crafty so and so. He wants to inspect the technology of the day. So they freely let him go on the computer and look at the specs of the ship. So he's sat in the medical bay, learning how to take over the ship, which he does. He frees all of his men, takes over the ship. He then has a very, very strange fight with Captain Kirk because they managed to. Obviously, Kirk never gets captured, does he?
Yeah.
So he flooded the ship with gas to knock everyone out. He has a fight with Khan where Khan just hurls him around the room over and over and over again, and then Kirk beats him almost to death with a metal pipe. And it all goes a bit funny at that point. You think it's just very stereotypical Star Trek. All's lost. Oh no, wait, one man saves everyone, and then they're back. So this is where I thought, well, he must have done something to him to really upset him. That's why he's coming back for him. All he said from the very beginning about Khan was he wanted to conquer worlds. Right? So he said to him, "We're not going to take you back to the Federation. You and your men can all go onto this planet we found. It's inhabitable, and so it's a new world for you to conquer." And Khan looks genuinely like this is a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
He's got away with his mutiny. He's going to get back down to this planet, and everything's fine. I thought, well, why has he come back and been such a dick? And then I watched the film again, and now it's obvious. Alpha Ceti 6 explodes.
Yeah.
Almost destroys his planet, pushes him out of orbit. He's now in an uninhabitable world. and that's why he's so pissed off. At the time, I couldn't put the two together. So it does make sense why he's so pissed off.
It sounds like he was more of a nuisance in the TV show than it does in the film.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't really a nuisance.
It was more hijinks.
Yeah.
Do you know, it just felt like he was just a bit of a dick.
It doesn't surprise me
his
to hear
wife
that.
got killed, though, didn't she? His wife got killed by...
Well, his wife was one of the crew from Enterprise, so she was a historian.
Oh,
so
okay.
She was brought in to help him come to the 200 odd years later. She fell in love with him and basically just did whatever he said, and he helped with the mutiny. So that's why she went with him.
Oh, okay.
She was a human as opposed to the other 70 odd
being genetically
modified.
Okay.
But yeah, none of that surprises me. Like the idea that this all kind of stems back to the fact that they just gave Khan just free access to the computer. Because you even see it in this, like later on in the film, like the limited, there is 0 checks on Chekhov and Captain Terrell. It's like they made it clear. It's like, oh, we've been under mind control by Khan. And they're just like, oh, that sounds rough. Give these guys some faces and let's just get on with our fucking day. It's like, whoa. How about you take them off the fucking field, make them sit out a couple of plays? Of course they're gonna like turncoat on you. It's ridiculous. Maybe it's something to do with future socialism. I don't know, where everyone becomes inherently trusting because I have no idea.
How does a mind control cockroach work?
Yeah, I know. It's very convenient, that isn't it? That the only thing that's alive on that planet is somebody's going to let me get off.
Yeah,
the planet.
but not just that. It's his offspring. So he's basically just, I don't know, pulled some lava off this fucking big thing and he's putting it ears.
He does say that it's gonna wrap around your cerebellum. It's gonna make you very suggestible, and then it's gonna kill you.
Okay,
which it didn't. It just crawled out of Chekhov's ear.
That looked fucking great, by the way.
It did look very good.
Yeah, that was the whole best thing I saw when it fell out of his ear.
But it's not what he said. He said it was going to wrap around your brain and kill you.
Yeah,
but it didn't.
It's
he
weird.
Decided to leave his ear.
I wonder if it's because he was linked to the other one, and when the other one vaporized, he just gave up. Maybe.
Who knows? All I know is that when I was younger, I found that sequence very disturbing. It's a torture sequence. Like again,
which one? Sorry, which sequence? The
when Multivan takes
the ear, or they put it in?
You see like the weird. It almost looks like a scarab, which is gross enough. You're like, what the fuck's that going to be? Then he takes like the little worm things off that, or the larva, whatever you want to call it, and it's just the way he just plonks it in the helmet and just sticks on their heads, and you're just like, oh my god, that is so fucked up. And of course, everyone has that same fear, the idea of it being stuck. It's going to crawl into your ear, and you literally just can't reach it. It's like, oh, hands free, you can do what you want, but you can't take off the helmet, so it's going to crawl into your ear and make you insane, basically. It's horrendous.
As a child, that's the only thing that I can remember growing up. But ironically now, as an adult, the thing I think of is Spock. So he's just, as a young person, the thought of a slug thing crawling into your ear. I mean, that was way worse than Spock dying. I couldn't give a shit about that.
It's much worse. And I tell you who really sells it. It's not actually Chekhov, and I keep it on Chekhov rather than the actor's name. It's Paul Winfield. He is so good. Like, he is sweating so much. Like, Chekhov's playing like the kind of stoic, man of honor almost kind of thing. Paul Winfield is clearly bricking himself from moment one. He's like, fuck, man, I hate worms. I fucking hate worms. And he's shitting himself. And it totally rubbed off on me watching that when I was a kid. I was just like, oh, this is just the worst sequence ever. But as an introduction to Khan, because again, you've explained the TV show. And for some fans, that's going to have, oh my God, Khan. For most of us, we're like, Khan? Who the fuck is Khan? He's just the dude on the poster with his chest out. But as soon as he shows up, he has so many great lines. His delivery is fantastic. I mentioned earlier that I actually think he's a bit of a dum-dum for most of this film. And everyone's at they go to such great lengths to one, explain his superior intellect, but then to also give him a free pass when he keeps making bad decisions. But he's awesome in that sequence, and I think it sets up the rest of the film fantastically. Oh, Dave's holding up a picture of.
It doesn't do justice of just how.
Yeah, he didn't say anything with it. Not the best podcasting, just holding up pictures. Just like,
I tell you one thing that, like, SETI Alpha 5 destroyed, and he's lost his wife and everything, and they're on the way out. And they managed to keep their bottles of baby oil, so I guess that's a good thing because they were all very slick. Like, they had their chest out, they were all very slick men.
Think that's the biggest issue with the film, going back and watching it 42 years later, is just the whole crew of the SS Botany Bay. It's like they look like Mad Max rejects. The look it's tough in 2024, and not just now. When I watched this when I was younger, I'm talking late 80s, early 90s, whatever it was, they looked ridiculous then. they look absurd now. Like Montalban as Khan, you can kind of get over it because his look is so ridiculous, and he kind of pulls it off because he's got the hair, he's got the chest out, he's got that fucking pimp ass glove which he's rocking, which is awesome. But then the rest of his crew, you've got to be of a certain demeanor to be pulling off that look, and the only one who's pulling it off is Montalban. He's the only one. Everyone else is just like, they even look like they feel slightly ridiculous wearing it. You've got to have a certain level of confidence to have that look and pull it off. And he's the only one rocking it, as far as I'm concerned.
I know this is early for facts, but just to let you know, they all came off the SS Chippendale. So they were all Chippendale
oh God
models, basically filling in the back. So they were just jacked guys.
Yeah,
you know, and I tell you no experience.
You probably why they got the Chippendales as well, because Khan came to set one day and just said, "This is how I'm dressing. Everyone else is going to have to match me. Well, we can't have somebody with a body like Scotty now, can we? So we need some fucking,
Well, maybe I wouldn't be surprised if he's that kind of character where he just showed up on set one day and that's his glove, and they're just like, Jesus Christ, you just wear those fucking gloves? He's like, yeah, I'm going to wear it in the film, but I'm only going to wear one of them. Like, he makes a big point of taking one of them off, leaves on the other one like fucking Michael Jackson, like a lunatic, somehow pulls it off. But yeah, I think he's fantastic. But I'm on board with the movie like straight away because, and I mentioned at the end of the last podcast, because of the James Horner score, which I think is like legitimately elite level score. And like, this film has got like a nautical theme throughout, and I'm not sure if it's kind of, out of necessity, because again, they only had a limited budget for the effects, so everything is actually quite slow. You don't see ships spinning around or anything like that. It's all very slow paced, and I say it's like nautical, and it's not even like ships, it's more like submarines, which gives everything a kind of, like, everything feels very methodical. They put you in the position, you understand what's going on in the battle, rather than kind of pyrotechnics where ships are flying around, it looks cool, but you don't really understand what's going on. In this, they go to great lengths to explain everyone's moves. It's closer to something like The Hunt for Red October than it is to most Star Trek films. But it all comes back to that James Horner score, which, we mentioned, like, the battle scenes could have almost been like a happy accident where they were forced by the budget. It's certainly true of James Horner, because Jerry Goldsmith scored the motion picture, the first film, and simply put, they couldn't afford to bring him back. So they're like, James Horner, who's obviously famous now for, he's done Braveheart, Titanic, Avatar, Aliens, Commando, did fucking Commando. So he was the one who did like those weird what were they, like steel pans?
Steel drums.
Bum, 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 bum. Anyway, I fucking love that score. But this was his first ever film score, so they obviously took a punt on him. But my God, right from they might be some of my favorite opening credits of all time. And it's just because of the score. But it gives like every action sequence a gravitas which it needs, because visually it might look gorgeous as a still, but there's not much movement going on. It's a still background and a ship slowly moving along, and and because of that, it puts all the emphasis on the characters. It does mean we get some slightly silly sequences. The first interaction between Khan and Kirk, when they're both on their ships and he kind of leaves him for dead, it's almost a little bit like, again, to bring back Austin Powers, a little bit Scotty, just shoot him, just kill him. He's there. He has like 4 opportunities to just end his life, and he's always fucking around. And you have like this thing where you've got the 2 screens where they're talking to each other. But then when he asks him for the information, they do the whole like high school thing where they just turn around and whisper at each other. They don't turn the screen off. They don't turn down the volume. They just kind of talk. Oh, just nod and pretend I'm saying something. It's all vaguely ludicrous, but from a character perspective, it's absolutely fantastic. So I allow it, despite the fact it is all vaguely a little bit silly, sadly.
The score is all right. I do like the score, but the best music is by far Scotty's bagpipes at the end. I fucking love a bagpipe.
Well, yeah, you love Amazing Grace. I mean, they play Amazing Grace, which is a very versatile piece of music, because Amazing Grace should be really cheesy for the end of this film, but it totally works. But in another film, I recently watched the 1978, I want to say, version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It uses the same piece of music to very, very different effects. To say, there's nothing emotional about that. It's just terrifying. But in this, I'm just like, this should be cheesy. But of course, you have, Kirk, Shatner again, just absolutely slaying in that final sequence. And all my travels across whatever it is.
Aside from Bones, he's a cunt, and Spock and Kirk, basically, the others didn't really get much to do. Chekhov's probably the one that spoke the most. And like, what's his name? Scotty didn't speak a lot. Uhura didn't speak much. Again, what's flying guy's name?
Sulu.
Like, fucking, he didn't speak at all.
They never do though.
No,
do they?
nobody
Because they
does.
are
Yeah, but
effectively
I
minor
don't know.
characters in the back.
When
They are.
I haven't watched the film or the TV show, so,
So that's what they are. It's only ever Kirk, Spock, and occasionally it's like they'll talk to Scotty, and Scotty will basically tell them he can't do it, and then he does it every single time. But the rest of them are just plot points. It's doing something.
But that's the thing. I would argue, to bring it back to my earlier point about this being about Kirk and his relationships, this film more than any other is just Shatner's film. Like, and I don't just mean in terms of his performance. I do think it's his best performance in a Star Trek film. In terms of the script, the way it's structured, like I said, even Spock, who dies in this film, so everyone remembers it, he doesn't get much to do. Bones, all he does is he shows up, and probably why he feels like a complete character. Bones has always been a bit of a caricature. He's just a grumpy old fuck. That's his shtick. But in this, because he has no character development, he doesn't really get much to do. He just feels like a bit of a caricature. Chekhov gets a bit to do at the start, but the film is constantly just trying to get you back to Shatner. And if you have any doubts that, you only have to go back to the start of the film. So you have Kirstie Alley, she's doing the Kobayashi Maru, which is a cool sequence until you stop and think about it, that all of the characters on the ship, they're all like doing a little performance for her. Like, oh God, Kirstie Savik's.
Sorry, mate, I had a bit of an issue with my mic then. So so what were you on about Kirstie Alley? Sorry?
Yeah, so like she's obviously doing the test, but then you get like the whole crew of the ship all having to do a performance. Like every time somebody does that test, do they all have to come back in and pretend like they've been blown up? Like there's one thing kind of like delivering lines, but it's like Spock, who's like pretty high up in the pecking order on this ship. He's number 2 on the most famous starship in like the universe. And you're like, oh, you're gonna have to pretend to be dead again. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, again? This is ridiculous. But so everyone else is doing this little pantomime, and then what you get with Shatner and Kirk, it's like the doors open, he's backlit. That light has no business being there, other than to make fucking Shatner look badass. He comes out holding a leather-bound book, which I'm sure smells of rich mahogany for no fucking particular reason, other than again to make him look like a badass. He's like the most awesome 51-year-old ever. Although I make the argument that Shatner should be getting tested at every opportunity. I mean, he is 93 years old. Have you seen him recently? He looks like 70. He doesn't look much older than he does in this. It's fucking bananas. I'm like, why aren't more people talking about this? It's like Gene Hackman. He's like 93, and people are like, oh my God, look at Gene Hackman. I was like, yeah, he's 93. Even Clint Eastwood is starting to look a bit like a skeleton. Yeah, 93 years old. Kirk, Shatner, looks like the dude in your local pub. He's still got all that fucking puppy fat on him, shiny nose, like he looks like he's had a couple of bevies. He's going to fucking space. It's insane.
Some people just age.
It's insane.
Go back to the
he ages so well.
Go back to the Kobayashi Maru. What's the point in that? Because if it's a no-win scenario or it's a test, do you have to pass it?
You can't pass it.
No, that's what I mean. So why is it there?
So it's a test.
He says it's character.
Test how you deal with things. So they're not expecting you to win. They just want to see if you're going to break down, lose your shit, or go to the end. And that's the test.
So if they're making me, if they're saying right, you got to do the Kobayashi Maru. Okay, so do I? If I fail here, am I still going to be a Starfleet person? Yeah. Well, fuck you. I'm not doing it then. There's my character. You can't make.
Just be clear, Rob.
You wouldn't become a captain then.
I'm just going to say, if the test is ultimately a test of character, I think you've just failed it, sir.
No, my character is strong personality. I'm not going to do what you tell me.
I think they're going to say, he says strong character. We've written down belligerent cunt. You can go whichever one you want to, but yeah.
I will have my hands in the air going, yeah.
rather than captain, we'll put you down for canteen duty.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
because I'll give Kirk his fucking coffee as he, not Kirk, Spock his fucking coffee and croissant as he walks past me to save every fucker. What a twat. Fucking run like. By the way, my hates
keeps going back. Yeah. But
it's really upsetting him, isn't it? It's really upsetting.
No, I'm trying to keep this on track. I don't know if you want to just keep saying how much you hate the end and running around for 3 minutes. But I don't know. I've lost my place now. No, carry on.
Oh, but I was trying to think where else. I did like the ship. Was it the Reliance? I like the look of that ship. I thought that looked great.
No, I don't like them within the cells underneath like that.
No? The what?
In the cells. The
fuck is in the cells?
That power the ship.
An engine.
The engine.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you nerd. And then the comic.
Like, it's going to be a bit of a nerd. I actually, I knew, Dave, you were at least going to like this film. Early on in the film, when Bones goes back to what is ostensibly, I suppose, Kirk's apartment, which basically just looks like a fancier version of your man den. It's got all the same shit in it. It's got, it's got pictures of boats, old army generals, there's guns, there's swords. I'm like, it just looks like fucking Dave's
And
room.
then they bring him drink. I mean, it really is like my garage.
Oh, it really is. It really is. You would 100% love Romulan Ale. There's just no doubt about it.
If you go back to my man cave, it's just Lego and action figures, so it's a bit of a different fucking vibe.
It's your son's room.
Yeah, a bit of a vibe.
But it's weird. Like you mentioned the ship. I mean, Star Trek loves a bit of, for lack of a better term, ship porn. Not shit porn, ship porn. I was worried about my pronunciation there. It's not quite as egregious as the motion picture. Because I watched both these films when they re-released in cinema recently, and I actually think the motion picture holds up better on the big screen, because it is. If you think this is slow, Jesus Christ, I actually think this is a pretty brisk 145 minutes or so. I actually think the pace is fantastic.
I felt like
I think it's wonderful
episode.
Well, it is. That's why.
No, that's what I mean. It felt like an absolute. Like I put on, and I thought, well, fuck me, it feels like 45 minutes is going to fly by, and I couldn't believe there was like another hour and a half left to go. This fucking film.
See, I actually thought
how quickly it went.
Go back and rewatching it is like, it is smaller in scale. There's no doubt about it. But I actually just think it makes everything feel more personal, because they put an emphasis on the characters rather than the spectacle. And these are maybe the two extreme examples. If you look at the motion picture, it's all spectacle. They've really gone down the 2001 route. They're trying to, it all gets a little bit hokey. And you're just like, well, we're watching nebulas for like 30 minutes. And to bring it back to the ship porn thing, it's like, it is a great sequence, but they just have this kind of shot of the Enterprise, which goes on for what feels like 20 minutes. In this, they kind of run it back and do it again. And it is a gorgeous looking ship, and I can see why they do it. But the first one, I'm like, my God, this is still happening. You're still just look at the ship. Oh my God, look at the ship. Although, to be fair, you can make an argument for the Enterprise being cinema's most famous spaceship. Is that outrageous? Like, realistically, is it this or the Millennium Falcon? Is there anything else which is even in the conversation?
Yeah.
It has to be those two, right? The only thing which might put the Falcon ahead of this is the fact that the USS Enterprise has multiple versions. So there's like, I don't know, fucking 12 of them by this point. I have no, once you get to like the later films, they literally destroy them in every film. I think it started with like Generations, when like the ship disconnected.
It also comes off, yeah.
Yeah, which looked awesome, but they were like, that was the money shot for that film, and it was shown in all the trailers. So they just kept fucking blowing the bastard up in every single film, going into the new ones as well. Every film, it's like, the fucking Enterprise is blown up again. So I think that probably...
If they don't blow it up, it gets more or less destroyed and limps home. You think, well, they're not putting that back together, are they?
They never do the same. Whereas, like, the Millennium Falcon always looks the same. It's the same ship, basically. Whereas, the Enterprise, I don't know how many actual versions there are, but there's a fucking lot of them. But I understand why, again...
The Falcon's in just a really shit film. So,
I didn't.
Do you not like Star Wars either?
I fucking hate Star Wars. No, the thing I hate Star Wars is absolute nonsense. It's just a bunch of weird coloured people in a bar and lots of running around shooting pink lasers at each other. Whereas at least with Star Trek, it's all based in science. There's a chance that what's happening there might happen in the future. And that's what I like. I like the factual side of it.
A fan of scientific socialism. That's what he's really there for.
I want
science.
I want my sci-fi to be men with machine guns fighting aliens on a distant planet.
Well, yes.
The thing is, right,
I think
to be
Star
honest...
Trek could have done this. We talked about this. We watch a lot of the TV shows now, and it's Discovery, isn't it?
Discovery's just finished, yeah.
But as part of that, is it Michelle Yeoh? Is that her name?
Michelle Yeoh. She was in. She's gone on to do Section 31.
Yeah, so there's a chance that there's going to be a much more grown-up TV show. And I mean,
film.
Oh, it's a film.
It's a film now, yeah.
So Discovery is a 15, but it's partial swearing and a little bit of shooting. But what I really want, because she is a nasty character, is proper, Section 31, trying to make weaponized ships rather than just everything's about science and exploration. We wanted to see the bloody Klingon War, didn't we? All the terrible stuff that happens, they talk about in the past, but they never actually do it. I'd like to see a really grown-up Star Trek. probably a different part.
So I think these, again, one of the reasons I like this film so much is I think it gets the balance. I don't need a R-rated Star Trek film. I know they talked about it with Quentin Tarantino. I don't need everyone swearing on the deck of the USS Enterprise at all.
I don't. Tarantino. You just see
I think it needs to
space suits.
retain. Like I really like the 2009 one, and I don't mind I actually think Into Darkness is massively underrated. I think the nerds got very upset because they had the audacity to ostensibly remake this film. It's perfectly decent when judged on its own merits. They really fucked the ending with the Khan bit because they kind of cut the two together. So I actually thought, spoiler alerts for Into Darkness, I actually thought Kirk dying instead of Spock was really clever, and I thought that sequence was really emotional and really good. But when they kind of forced in the Spock shouting Khan thing when he died, I fucking hated that. I can imagine
he didn't chew his face enough. That's the thing.
Oh, it was just
because I've seen that before this.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting, and I know Khan's already been beaten at this point, but after Spock died, I was expecting Kirk to shout Khan because I've seen Into Beyond Darkness or whatever.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh wait, but then I realized, no, I've already missed it. And the other thing I've always heard before, and maybe it's coming through now, Khan. And I've never understood what that was for. And it's just fucking like if it feels ad-libbed, not ad-libbed. Like it's added. What was it when they add the audio after? I can't remember the phrase. Yeah. So because Nick doesn't move his mouth, but you hear him go, "It's coming through now, Khan." Like what the fuck is going? Like these are all the things I've heard on podcasts and people say and all that, and I'm just thinking, oh fucking hell! It was really weird.
You can't really think Cumberbatch is as good at Khan.
No, absolutely not. Like he's
Okay,
like, don't
fine.
get me wrong. I actually think Cumberbatch. Fine. No, I just meant I've seen lists where, excuse me, people have like rated the Star Trek films, of course, and the only last place film which is even in consideration is Star Trek V. It's appalling. The Shatner one where Shatner meets God. It's just a terrible film. I don't care what anyone says. But a lot of people put Into Darkness last place. It doesn't belong anywhere near last place. In fact, I go as far as say Into Darkness is better than Beyond, quite comfortably. In fact, I actually thought. I thought Beyond is everything that this film, which basically Rob is saying about this film.
Oh, is that the one where he does Space Motorwax?
Yeah. And they've just got the Beastie Boys going, and he's like,
it basically that film is everything I think I feared this film would be in terms of like it just feels like an episode, but in the worst way because nothing feels important. Whereas in this, because of the relationships, because of the dialogue, because of the characters, everything does have a level of import that was completely lacking, I thought, from Beyond. Beyond is fine, it's watchable, but it's kind of fine in the same way that like I don't know, Star Trek Insurrection is kind of fine, you know? Whereas Into Darkness, it has it like the low points are actually really low, but there's loads of cool stuff. And it's arguably Star Trek. It's in terms of spectacle, other than maybe the motion picture, because they do serious money at that, they really go for it in that film. It doesn't all work, but the high points are really high, the low points are really low, of course, whatever. But Beyond is just like a 4 out of 10 for the whole film. Whereas this film, I think, is the one film that arguably puts it all together, both tonally, in terms of a bit of spectacle, despite the budget.
You said Star Trek Insurrection, and it was
Insurrection. I just use that as an example of a totally
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, I've never ever seen a Picard version of Star Trek.
No.
Not the TV show, not the films. I've never.
It's not my favorite.
You know, actually, sorry, I'll take that back because I did watch Picard season 1. Randomly.
It was fine.
You couldn't follow it because you didn't know it. It was basically just a reunion show, wasn't it? Where
it was a reunion show.
They brought someone back from the old
show. You want to talk aliens?
I loved it.
You want to talk aliens? What pissed me off then was they moved his soul into a fucking clone and said, "Oh, your clone still ages. Nothing special about it. It's just why did you need that storyline? Like fuck, you know." Oh man, Star Trek cannot.
Star Trek's always been a mixed bag, and I actually think one of the issues with Star Trek, and maybe it's because it has such a wide breadth, and certainly historically compared to say Star Wars, if we're still talking about those two franchises, because usually it's like if you're into like action movies or into 80s movies or into sci-fi, usually pick one, Star Trek or Star Wars. Rob's the unique case where he doesn't like either, which is bizarre because you think your taste would align with at least one of them. But the one thing it maybe lacks is it doesn't have that iconic villain. The closest thing it has to an iconic villain is arguably Khan, and they had to go back to a TV show to find him. The one thing, and I think he's great in this, but he dies. Spoiler alert. Star Trek has arguably always lacked its Darth Vader. It's never had a truly memorable villain. Like it's had memorable villains in terms of like the Klingons are memorable. The Borg are super memorable.
Yeah.
But there's not. Is there like a really memorable Klingon in terms of like to kind of hang your hat on in that regard.
It's not an individual, is it? It's always
that's what I mean.
That's kind of the point, though, isn't it? It's not a story about one person. Well, it's Captain Kirk most of the time, but it's about the Federation. So it's a wider thing. So it's always it's like countries in space, isn't it? It's always about that.
But
I just think it could do with something to like attach to. Because again, sorry to Brian, but the reason this film works is because you have that connection. Like in other films, you had Christopher Lloyd as Krug, Christopher Plummer in Undiscovered Country as Chang. He's good, but they don't have that same attachment. They don't linger in the memory in the same way. Sorry, Rob.
That's it. I don't think you need a villain to last. You could have killed Darth Vader; it would have been fine. Have him in the 3, but then you've got to tell the fucking story.
Truly said by someone who doesn't like Star Wars.
But that's they've latched onto that villain, and for me, it's made it worse. I don't need more stories of how he became a tin can or what happened to him after he died. I don't fucking need it. You had him as a good villain in supposedly a good villain in the 3 films, but you don't need any more of it.
Cinema's greatest villain yet. Got it.
But for this, all right, you had Khan, and Khan again supposedly is a good villain, and then you had the introduction in the TV show. That's great. You've linked him back. You didn't need that. People didn't need to watch the TV show to watch the film. That's fine. But I don't need them to go, oh, Khan nearly died, but he's back for the next film. Oh, do you know what? Khan lost an arm, but he's back for the next film. Oh, do you know what? Khan lost a leg now as well as an arm, but he's back for the next film. I don't need that. Kill Khan off. He did what he did. He was fucking stupid anyway.
I think that's fine.
Nebula, so I don't think you need an overarching villain. You need a villain to show danger. You need a villain to set like the pace and to fight against and to be dangerous. But then inevitably, you want the good guy to win.
You do, but I think things can become a bit nebulous. If we look at another series you inexplicably don't like, I think it's actually been one of the few problems with the Mission Impossible series, other than Mission Impossible 3, which I think is massively...
The good guy is the problem in that film.
Well,
the problem in those films.
Mission Impossible 3, by bringing in Philip Seymour Hoffman, reminds you what, like, in many respects, Mission Impossible 3 is arguably one of the weaker Mission Impossible films, but is elevated massively by Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's fantastic in it. Whereas the other movies, amazing set pieces, fantastically directed, they've got a great lead, but they're lacking a truly memorable villain. It's one of the things like, James Bond has always had. They've always had that kind of lurking in the background with Spectre and everything like that. You can still have new villains for every movie, but to have that kind of wider threat, I think helps. And maybe, like I said, maybe they've been lacking that, or, it's a shame that there's never been a truly, and I'm sure some Star Trek fans will be very upset. I mean, fuck, they're much more likely to be upset by Rob than they are by anything I say. But, there's never been a truly memorable Klingon threat. And I know they tried to do the Borg Queen in First Contact, but that kind of felt antithetical to the whole Borg concept to me, to a certain extent, as much as I like that film. So, but anyway, it's a moot point, I suppose.
The best Mission Impossible villain was Dougray Scott by far. Like that guy,
I don't watch them.
Dougray Scott is the worst.
Dude, I had to search his name because I forgot it. I know Mission Impossible 2 was slated, but yeah, just the problem with that is the star of those films.
It's not.
It's also Mission Impossible. Like Fast and the Furious. They just have to bigger and better every time, and it just gets stupid. I started watching the first
How
one.
dare you?
So boring.
How dare you compare
Mission Impossible?
Yeah. Oh, how are you comparing Mission Impossible to
Canal for ages? Like, what the hell's going on?
Been
murdered apart from him. You're like, why?
You're shitting on the Brian De Palma directed Mission Impossible and comparing it to the Fast and Furious franchise. I mean, goddamn.
Yeah, they're both shit.
They're completely different movies.
They are completely different movies, but they are both shit.
I'd rather watch Star Wars.
Do you know, like, Fast and Furious is such a weird franchise. You mentioned 4, 5, 6. They got the alchemy was just right for 3 films. Then it got too silly. The first ones were a little bit too grounded.
Was
5
the one where they steal the? You said was 5 the one where they steal the bank vault?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's realistic. And then
it's dumb as hell.
Was 6 the one where he jumps over a bridge and catches Letty?
I think that's 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
they're inherently dumb.
You get to the one where they use magnets for every fucking thing to even fly into space.
That's when it's like truly jumped the shark. And don't get me wrong, they're completely different franchises. Like by 4, 5, the reason Fast and Furious did work is because it did jump the shark. But then for 7, 8, 9, whatever they were, they kind of went back and jumped over 4 sharks instead. It got more ridiculous. So
This
I
episode
but
has
like I
gone
said,
off
very
the rails. This episode has gone off the rails.
it certainly has. One of the things I found quite interesting, I mean, we've not even mentioned the whole Genesis presentation, and that's a weird part of the story, I suppose, and kind of like lays the groundwork for the subsequent sequels. But it was the first ever completely CGI image sequence in any feature film of all time, which was 1982. They'd been CGI and what's that? No. When they're watching a video of Carol explaining the Genesis project, and it's basically just a presentation. There's a sequence where you're just watching the screen, and they show like the little duck going onto the planet, and the planet changes and stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's all done with CGI, and that's the first ever totally CGI sequence in movie history. There'd been other films, like I think Westworld had, I think that was the first one to have any CGI, but that was CGI combined with live action. That's the first ever sequence, and we don't even bat an eyelid because we're looking at a computer screen, so you don't think anything of it. But in 1982, that was a really big deal, and I think that's where fucking half the budget went. But everything that happens after that is actually a little bit odd, because you have that brief separation then when Kirk goes down to the planet and obviously has those interactions with Carol. He gets immediately fucking his son David immediately attacks him with a blade, and Carol doesn't seem completely nonplussed by that. But nobody seems to mention that when they kind of circle back round and Khan's been off with his merry men trying to get the Genesis, what would you call it? The Genesis, I don't know, device. That's what it's called, isn't it? He kills everyone at that laboratory, and nobody seems that bothered by the fact that he hangs them up like the fucking Predator. It's like, this whole film, they're trying to sell you on this idea that Khan is like really evil. And by this point, that's kind of wearing off a bit. And you're like, he's been a bit of a dumbass, to be honest. But then he does show up, he kills and tortures everyone. He hangs them up by their bootstraps while they're dead. Again, like the Predator. And everyone just kind of goes in and goes, well, that's pretty fucked up. And I'm, Jesus Christ, guys, I know we don't see a lot of blood, but ostensibly that is an absolute massacre of innocent people. And nobody seems to think of it as being a big deal, except for me, apparently. Very strange.
The other thing as well, they were on about Khan being supreme intelligence, weren't they? Kirk comes along and goes, oh, let's have a look at the transporter room, see where they went last. Khan didn't think of that?
Well, no, because I think that's part of the fact that he is ostensibly a 1990s guy. So he doesn't know everything, does he? It's the same later on.
But he knew how to transport it back because he locked onto their target and brought the Genesis device onto the ship.
That's a good point, because he also wants Kirk. So why didn't he beam Kirk back up with the Genesis bomb and just kill him as he lands?
And he was smart enough to, I don't know, bug... what was the captain's name? The next to Chekhov. What was his name, you said?
Oh, Tyrell.
They bugged, not actual bug, they like listened in on Tyrell with, I don't know, some sort of listening device attached to Khan's arm. What the fuck was that about?
Like a giant Casio watch.
Yeah, it was weird, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, as I said earlier in the podcast, like it is borderline a plot device, him just being a bit of a moron. And they, like you said, they kind of, even at the end where they're having the big naval battle at the end, and Spock lays it on a plate to Kirk, and kind of lends itself to the whole idea that they're fighting in submarines rather than ships on the sea. It's like, he's showing examples of two-dimensional thinking, and Spock and Kirk goes, "Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I'm just going to come from below, really slow," and he won't notice that. It's like if he's smart, surely he understands the concept of space being a three-dimensional space. It's in the fucking name. But yeah, his whole kind of like plan at the end is just, I'm going to sneak up behind him from below. That's it. Again, kind of silly. The score does a lot of the heavy lifting in those sequences. The dialogue does a huge amount of the heavy lifting. The sequence when he's speaking to Khan, it's like, I've hurt you, and I wish that I'm not going to do the Welsh accent again. And that leads to the Khan scream. The reason I didn't do the Khan scream at for the intro is because it's not just the Khan scream. It's the inaudible buildup. It's the shaking of the face, the rage building up, and then the Khan. It's ridiculous, sure. Is it memorable? 100%. But again, it comes down to the fact that this is such a character-driven movie for the most part, and it really is just about Khan and Kirk. But like you said, all the other characters are pushed to the sideline to one extent or another. But like we even met, I didn't realize that they were all playboys and playgirls. His crew, other than Joachim, Whackim, whatever the fuck his name is, his number 2. He's the only one who gets a line. Everyone else is just there, just standing in the background, like those annoying kids from Mad Max 3. You're just like, what the fuck are they all doing there? It's ridiculous. But
say about the him creeping up behind him. That's the most Star Trek thing of the whole film for me. I don't know how many times I've watched Star Trek and they lure someone into a nebula, and then everything's equal.
Classic Star Trek.
Won't be able to see me in a big cloud of gas somewhere in space.
I'm going to level the playing field in here, fella.
Examples. Yeah.
There's loads. I liked that last section. I did, like I said, mention the fact that as effective as it is, the whole Spock dying thing feels like it falls out of the fucking sky because he doesn't do much until he has his 3 minutes of just fanning about, as Rob said, and then eventually doing the job he needs to do. Again, everyone remembers the payoff rather than the build-up, but it's just like,
why did he wear the gloves?
The emphasis
the radiation's killing him. Why did he wear the gloves?
I'd imagine it's very hot, so it'd be easier to do the job.
Yeah, because he has to take the thing off.
He's not going to do it.
He's not in a rush, so it's fine.
He needs the gloves because he's not in a rush. Remember taking something out of the oven really slowly? It's not fun.
What you don't want is him to end up with gross hands like Khan at the end of the film. So after the ship gets blown up and Khan's all fucked up, his hand is gross. It's fucking gross. But like you said,
random question to ask. You know when Khan first attacks the Enterprise, and a lot of the engineers and stuff die, and everyone's lying on the floor. Why did Scotty come to the bridge with a dead man in his arms?
Oh, dude, what the fuck? Dramatic ass Scotty. Dude, go to sickbay. Yeah, why would you take him to the bridge?
It makes no sense. Wasn't in sickbay. For some reason, Bones is in the bridge as well. Like the fucking ship's doctor is just.
He's not the only doctor. They go like there is no reason for him to drag that poor kid who could have theoretically survived. Drags him up to the bridge to go. Well, you fucked it, didn't you? It's like fuck off, Scotty. Jesus Christ.
The only of a random question as well. At the end, they go, oh, we're on our way to pick up the crew of the Reliance who are on SETI Alpha 5. Motherfucker, they're all dead. Because
those bugs in areas.
Bugs and shit are on that planet. Like, you're going to get back and you're just fucking seeing bones. Like, so, Jesus Christ.
Coming towards the end of the film, I dare ask Rob, because I assume it had no emotional impact on him whatsoever. When you watch the end of this film, if you do have an emotional impact, is it when Spock dies or is it the funeral? Because again, I come back to Shatner being fantastic in this film. And I love it when you have like the strong guy having that little wobble. We mentioned on a bunch of podcasts, Kevin Costner's fantastic at this. His voice breaking ever so slightly, having such a massive emotional impact. And when he has that line at the end during the funeral, it's like, of my friend, I can say only this. Of all the souls I've encountered in my travels, his was the most human. You know, he has that long delay and delivers the line. I was just like, oh, dude, all the emotions in that sequence. But
I don't know. You go before. I didn't find the actual funeral that sad, if I'm honest. I think I was all out of tears by that point. It's the moment when he tries to talk to him and he hasn't switched the intercom on. And then when he shouts
Spock,
he just goes, Spock. He sounds so upset. And I mean, I could feel myself going slightly at that point. And then when they're like slouching down together and they put their hands, I mean, they're close to touching tips at that point.
Yeah. But that's the thing. If you don't have the connection to the TV show, you've literally seen what they've been on screen 2 or 3 times together. There's not much in the film. Like if you just watch the film in and of itself, it does nothing to justify the emotional connection that they have at the end of the film, and what they're implying is the impact of his death. You don't get any of that from the film. It's completely reliant on the idea that you've watched the motion picture, or more importantly, that you've watched the TV show, and you already think of them as these indelible characters, this indelible duo. You got the rest of the cast, of course, the rest of the crew, but when people think of Star Trek, they think of 2 things. They think of Spock and they think of Kirk. So this death sequence is based fundamentally on you having that connection to the characters built up well before you started watching this film, which I think is actually completely unique to this movie in many respects.
This film does it even more because it shows that Kirk had a relationship with, what's the name, the doctor and the Carol, and he had a son, but he gave that up because he was always going to be a Star Captain. Captain.
Yeah.
Star Trek man. He's going to be a Star Trek man.
Classic Coxman.
They've all given up a chance of family to be with this family. So I guess. Not necessarily a partner, it's his brother, isn't it? It's the person he spent most time with, so of course he's going to be devastated. So
but
that was a good interjection, even though I think David is an absolute prick.
Well, that's the thing. That's the difference between the 2 sequences, because you have this attachment, because you have these 2 great actors and these 2 characters that you love. That death has all of the emotional impact you would hope it would have. Whereas the ending, it has a wonderful, wonderful ending. As I said, this film is so thematically rich, and this idea of aging and relationships and your place in the universe, all these other things are like hinted at, and I think it's a fantastic film, a fantastically melancholic ending rather than like a genuinely sad ending, especially when they show you him on the planet and the Genesis and all that bollocks. But what is the other side to that coin? So if on the one side you've got just how impactful the death of Spock is, blah, blah, blah. The other side of that coin is the kind of the scene with David and Shatner at the end, where suddenly, they have the, oh, you're my father, I'm proud to be your son. And they have the most awkward hug in movie fucking history. And it's just such an awkward
might as well shaking hands, didn't they?
Yeah, they really should. They should have celebrated like 1970s footballers, just walked over, shook hands, and then just wandered off quite awkwardly.
Smack his ass and walk away.
It's back at a time when guys didn't really know how to show emotion to each other. And it's like
that hug didn't look awkward though. That seems like the hug my father would have given me.
Dear. But yeah, after all the emotion of the Spock death, the sequence with David and Shatner and Kirk, fell completely flat for me, sadly. So it doesn't all work.
Yeah.
My feelings on the whole death thing.
Here we go.
I could have give two fucks. Like, he died, happy days, fucking move on.
Just the kind of film,
yeah.
That's the thing.
But as soon as Scotty starts playing the bagpipes, tears.
Really?
Yeah. No fucking tears, absolutely.
Dead inside.
Yeah. But no, I had an emotion when they played the bagpipes. I liked it.
It's funny.
I had an emotion.
I had an emotion. I know it was
telling his wife,
felt tingling inside.
Kat, it happened. I had an emotion. I finally had, and it took bagpipes. We're moving to Scotland. Quickly, before my son's first recital, I must have more of these. Should we move on to favorite scenes? If Rob indeed has one. I'll start. I mean, for me, we've already kind of it's the two ends of the film. So on the one hand, it's the death of Spock, which is super memorable. I also love the first appearance of Kirk after the failed Kobayashi Maru. It's like the ultimate hero sequence for 51. Like, you shouldn't be that heroic when you're holding a leather-bound book and you're 51 years old, but it looks absolutely fantastic. And the funeral's cool as well. But if I'm not being a hipster, it's probably Spock dying. It's the most memorable sequence in the film. But there is a whole bunch of them I could have picked in fairness.
Yeah, ditto. I mean, it's just fantastic, isn't
it? For me, it's shooting Spock into space and then playing the bagpipes.
Yeah, well, I had the funeral down as well. I mean, it's
when
great.
They shot Spock into space.
Yeah,
they shot him at the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they shot him like around the curvature of the planet, didn't it? Yeah.
So
I guess gravity just played its part.
Yeah, I got a slight sort of. The Genesis bomb was on the ship.
Yeah,
that exploded,
and it made a planet.
That made a planet.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So were they shooting it at that planet thinking, well, that planet's made life? I wonder whether, or were they just thinking, it looks like.
Oh, no, they just shot it. Yeah.
I think it just looks, I just think it just looked nice. But, I think.
What happens to that?
Slightly short-sighted, I think.
So if the Genesis bomb explodes and it creates life and there was already life on the ship, is there going to be like a Khan tree at some point? Like, are you just going to get walking onto that planet? There's like a Khan face sticking out of the tree.
This is what she says, isn't it? That the Matrix breaks everything down and rebuilds it as it thinks it should be.
Yeah.
So, in theory, I guess that planet is partly Khan.
Yeah.
But it would have killed him.
But then why does it bring Spock back exactly as Spock and not?
Because it isn't. Because he's delivered to the planet after it's been created, I think is the difference. So if you shoot the Genesis at a planet, the Genesis device at a planet with life, it destroys life and recreates it, but ultimately destroying the life.
That's just seems a bit convenient.
Yeah,
that's
it is massively. But I think that's the important thing about the end of the film is that idea that you could just end it there. But it's basically, you've probably seen the videos online, like with the cat where it's sleeping and they think the cat's dead and they play the music from like Transformers and then his paw flicks and then you bring up the credits. It's basically a more subtle version of that. Or like have you seen did you watch what was it? Batman vs Superman?
Yeah, I've seen it.
The end when Superman's dead and they bury him and you see like the ground just starts lifting up as if to go, is he dead? Is he dead? It's kind of like that, but it's more kind of like if you want to believe he's dead and we didn't make another film, it totally works. But it does just enough to leave the door open thematically and to say, well, if we want to bring Spock back, we can and we have a reason. That's the only reason it really works, I guess.
Cool.
Anyway, loves and hates. In terms of loves, number one, the score, the James Horner score, I've mentioned a bunch of times, absolutely adore it. Number two, the script, especially the dialogue. Montalban and Shatner are on absolutely top form. Three, the cinematography. I think it's a gorgeous looking film. And if I'm going to sneak in a four, Montalban's magnificent torso. It shouldn't work. It's ridiculous, but he looks fantastic. But that's the air of a man who can pull off. We mentioned it earlier. You've got playboys and playgirls in the background who can't pull off. And you get this fucking cigar smoking Mexican who rolls into town who can pull off the single glove and his chest all fucking shiny and stuff. Absolutely fantastic. So those are my loves.
Yeah.
First is Captain Kirk. I think is a fantastic performance, as you said. But the things that I wrote down about Captain Kirk through this was funny, cocky, and a little podgy. I love the fact
that he's a little podgy.
He's got a little bit around the middle. He just reminds me of Zach Brannigan from Futurama, which I'm sure
exactly
based on.
Based on.
Yeah. Second, then the music. I love the score; it's fantastic. I love the fact that, as you said, it does so much heavy lifting. It tells you exactly what the mood you could be feeling as it goes through. So you never feel confused. Just listen to the music. That's great. And third, I love the earbuds. I love the concept of it.
Oh, it's great.
I loved how for a very old film now, it still looked pretty good. And like you said, when it was coming out of his ear,
that was one of the best things.
That was really good.
For me, Khan, he is loving what he's doing. To the point where
not very well, but
to the point where they did it around his Boss the Plane show, Fantasy Island. So we filmed it around Fantasy Island. The music, I liked it. I loved the bagpipes, as I've said. But I did like the score as well. I thought that was really good. And I loved the look of the Enterprise. Like when you had the one of 9,000 shots of the Enterprise, the first shot was pretty cool, but then it got a bit fucking much. Okay.
Well, the thing is, the other shots aren't necessarily shots of the Enterprise, but it's moving so slowly that it almost feels like another still of the Enterprise. There's only even at the start, it's not like I said, in the motion picture where it's just a static ship and they just kind of look at it for ages. In this, you get that briefly, but then it starts moving, but it's moving so slowly that you're it just looks like we're just looking at the ship again. It's oh, look, the ship. Oh, the other one, which you're not a fan of the other ship, of course.
Number 4, the bugs, as you said. The fucking bugs were great.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, they were pointless, but they were great.
Well, it's weird because hate's number one. I've got earworms, but it's because they're awesome. It's just that, but it's because they're gross. When I was younger, I found it so disturbing. So I say hate, but only because they're effective. I found them genuinely disturbing when I was younger. To some of the Barnetts age of the movie, you mentioned the crew of the SS Botany Bay. There's no escape. It's the Barnetts, the get up, everything. It clearly, I would say, even makes this film feel like a 70s film rather than an 80s film. And it does have a hint of that. We mentioned that on this podcast a whole bunch of times. The 80s cinematically and what we think of it culturally didn't really start until 84. This is an 82 movie, and in many respects still feels like a movie stuck in the 70s. Kirk's son is a bit of a non-event. David is quite wanky, and then he shows up with a jumper over his shoulders to provide his wanky credentials. It's just when you think he can't be more of a bellend, he shows up for no apparent reason on the deck of the ship with a jumper over his shoulders. It's yeah, dude, we get it. We've seen your haircut. You're a bellend. You don't need to prove it anymore. And number 4, if I was going to sneak it in, should I care more about Carol and her relationship with Kirk? I feel like I should, but I really don't. And she's another character who looks disproportionately 70s, for lack of a better term. So those are my hates.
So mine are Chekhov's accent. I've always had an issue with Chekhov's accent.
It's because it's not Russian.
Film. Yeah, exactly. Anton Yeltsin's it?
Anton Yelkin, yeah.
I mean, he's just trying to copy it. And it's
well, that's exactly what he did, because he couldn't do a Russian. He purposely, he's if I do a Russian accent, I'm not going to sound like Chekhov. Because Chekhov it's beyond the caricature, because he rolls all the wrong letters. It's ridiculous. I mean, it becomes charming almost, because it's, Russians don't do that. But hey,
yeah. So that's always annoyed me. So that's not just for this film. David, again, very annoying. As I put here, you can tell Mudo's in, bit of a prick.
Yeah.
I think that sums him up pretty well.
Yeah.
And I think whether this is a hate or not, or whether it's something they could have changed, I feel like they rushed Khan in, and they could have explained this story a little bit more for the people who haven't seen it. Just would have added a little bit more to the storyline.
Yeah. You could even have a flashback to the TV show. Yeah.
Oh, no,
you really couldn't. You really couldn't.
For racial reasons.
For me, Bones, a lot of a prick, not a bit of a prick. Dave, prick as well. And the fact that Spock wasn't in a rush to save everybody totally pissed me off.
Any alternative titles for this film? I can't imagine there'd be too many, would there?
No, I just gotta go. I got like fucking 4 things on the go here. Give me a sec. Why did I take a picture of my credit card?
I'll take that off.
Okay. No, basically it's Star Trek 2, but you got like so from Denmark, The Revenge of Khan.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Sweden, Star Trek 2, Khan's Peace.
What?
Yeah.
Yes, that doesn't work.
Nope, and that's it.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough. Any facts to make up for it?
Yeah, we got a few. Did you use your order already? Okay. So the famous Space, the Final Frontier monologue is heard for the first time since Star Trek, now narrated by Leonard Nimoy. However, this has been changed slightly. Instead of saying its 5-year mission and to seek out new life, this now says her ongoing mission and to seek out new life forms. So there you go. One of Admiral Kirk's antiques is a Commodore PET computer. Leonard Nimoy did not know about the final shot of Spock's coffin on the surface of the Genesis planet. He first saw this at a premiere and has said that his first thought was, I'm going to be getting a call from Paramount. Kirstie Alley was a huge fan of Star Trek as a child. Mr. Spock was her favourite character and she would fantasize about being his daughter. When she auditioned for Savick, she did an impression of Leonard Nimoy's portrayal of Spock as she knew the character so well.
Isn't she supposed to be half Romulan in this film? Is that supposed to be a thing? Am I making that up? I think she's supposed to be a half Vulcan, half Romulan. Anyway, doesn't matter.
When Sci-Fi Channel aired this film on television, Leonard Nimoy appeared on screen during commercial breaks, explaining various memories and trivia about the film itself. One of the items was the character's backstory of Lieutenant Savick, who is intended to have Romulan Vulcan heritage, which would have made her more emotional than a pure-blood Vulcan. 3 hints of this remain in the final film. During the Kobayashi Maru simulation, she says to herself, damn. She gasps in shock when Scotty appears on the bridge with midshipman Preston's injured body, and she is emotionally moved by Admiral Kirk's eulogy. This fucking load, so I'm just gonna. The close-ups of the SETI eels entering and exiting Chekhov's ear were done using a huge rubber replica of Walter Koenig's ear. One morning, the effects crew discovered our department had left a true-to-scale Q-tip next to the giant ear.
That's nice.
Bust, apparently.
Wow.
Oh,
those guys.
Yeah. Oh, fucking jokers. One of the Reliance crew, Commander Kyle, played by John Winston, was a recurring member of the Enterprise crew on the original Star Trek. George Takei initially declined to appear in this film. William Shatner called Takei and convinced him to reconsider. Well, that was never happening.
They can get on, did they?
They hate each other now as well, don't they? Absolutely hate.
It's weird as well to think because we watch this film and we're like, this is 42 years ago, so we think of this being this old film kind of thing, but it's like they were already like that's a big theme of this film is aging. Like he's already an older dude. Like he's 51. 42 fucking years ago. It's insane. And they'd already had this kind of like long history in the TV show, but we can't help it as thinking of it as old. This is like sidetracked now, but I remember like playing Assassin's Creed. What was the Viking one recently? Valhalla, which was a few years ago. And it's set in like, I think 12th or 11th century AD. And of course they're cutting about the UK and you see Roman ruins, like ruins. And of course, you're like, oh yeah, even like this was like 900 years ago. The Romans were like there 1100 years even before that. And it's like you always kind of get your head around it. I know that's an extreme example, but you think of this as like, oh, this is his old film. And it's like, oh, this is back at the start of their adventures because it's the second film, but they're already old because you've had the TV show and everything that came with it. Sorry, bit of a
That's
rant.
right. The time difference between the episode Space Seed, which you watched, Dave, and The Wrath of Khan is 15 years, both in release dates and the time gone by in the plot. So that's not
Nice.
Khan's muscular chest seen throughout this film is actually Ricardo Montalban's real chest and not a prosthetic, as is often reported.
It has that look about it. It almost looks fake.
That guy came in wearing that shirt. I fucking 100% guarantee it. Moving Starfield during the title sequence was filmed by putting the camera in the center of the floor of a local planetarium aimed up.
Yeah, it has that feel to it. It's a weird shot at the end of the film, the way the stars move. It just doesn't feel natural at all.
Khan is never once addressed by his full name, Khan Noonien Singh, which he was introduced as in Space Seed. I'll leave it at that. There's
cool.
Just way too many to go through.
All right. Do you want to go there? All right. So, Hug to the Future. This is where I ask a question: remake, sequels, Let It Die or Leave Well Alone. This is an odd one because they kind of already did a remake with 2013's Into Darkness. As I said, I don't feel it's anywhere near as bad as a lot of people suggest. Obviously, it does encourage direct comparison with this film, which obviously isn't the case because this is a much better movie in many respects. But we don't need to see Khan come back. We don't need to see another version of this. It's like, leave well alone. I mean, I know Rob's not a fan of it, but I think this is, a perfectly pitched slice of Star Trek action, and I'm happy for this to stay back in 1982.
Agreed. Yeah, it doesn't need it. They
Yeah,
gave
yeah.
it a go. It was, like you said, it was fine.
It was fine.
It's
It was
just
fine.
not as good.
It just felt a bit forced. In terms of making a change, so this is where you ask.
Can I answer?
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I thought the way you
We
were
don't
looking
want
at
to
it,
know what
you
you
were
think.
interested.
Sorry?
Sorry, I didn't think you were keen on it. I was just like, I don't care. Like,
I'll still answer. No, don't make a remake. It's just not.
oh, there we go. Yeah,
you don't need it. You absolutely don't need a remake of this because, well, you really don't. There's not much more I can say. I just wanted my 5 seconds, mate.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. My apologies. Make a change. So he asked a question: if you can only make one change to make this movie better, dare I say, beyond the hair and some of the costume design, really aging the film, make Khan a bit smarter. Dare I say, like the whole thing about his superior intellect. I mean, they kind of get away with it, but he makes a lot of really dumb decisions for supposedly the smartest guy in the universe. So that's what I'd go with.
Sort of change a scene slightly. When they beamed up the Genesis device, I think they should have taken Kirk.
Yeah.
I'd like to have seen Khan Kirk fight.
Yeah.
Go old school, make it really shit looking, like they did in the TV show. Just to wrap it back up again. They sort of mirror parts of the TV show, so they should have done it in the film. I'd like to have seen.
Well, they actually did that in Into Darkness, didn't they? Like he has like a brief, but he's like someone stronger, so he ends up fighting Spock on the top of a train, I think, on the top of a ship. Anyway,
after he died, there was a whole like 15-20 minutes after he died.
They definitely have a fist fight anyway. But anyway,
maybe Kirk could have shivved him or something.
maybe that.
For me, for making a change, it's just make Spock run at the end.
Oh God, I'm gonna let this go.
No. Make Spock run. Like he knows what he wants to do to save it, right? But he fucking travels down 2 ladders like it's fine, stops to say hello to a guy, touches a guy on the face, fucking pinches him, and then takes some guy's gloves, and then the 3 minutes are gone. Run, dude. That's mine.
Okay. In terms of video games, there's been plenty of Star Trek games, very few that are actually any good. There was supposedly a Star Trek game, Wrath of Khan video game by Sega before the Atari 2600, because this was well before even the Master System. It was announced at Winter CES in '83, but was never released. If you're going to do one now, the obvious answer is probably something like Mass Effect and BioWare, just with more of an emphasis on relationships, building, like the stuff you did on the Normandy, only you replace the Normandy stuff with the Enterprise, obviously, and put more of an emphasis on naval, space battles rather than just getting off and doing shootouts. But, like peak BioWare and Mass Effect, it's like it was never a million miles away from Star Trek anyway. So yeah, I think that would totally work.
Are you out? Yeah. My answer was Mass Effect.
Are you out? I don't know video games.
I haven't played a video game for about 15 years.
My answer was Mass Effect as well. Because Mass Effect seems like it would capture the Star Trek thing perfectly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Best and worst of IMDb. So this is where we take the best 1 and 10-star reviews from IMDb about this film, and I assume it has quite a few of both, actually.
Well, I'm assuming the 1 star is from a Robert Westgate, and it's about Spock not moving quickly enough.
No,
just a 3,000-word essay on Spock not moving fast enough at the end of the film.
He didn't move fast enough, and E.T. didn't say goodbye fast enough.
No.
467,
just can't let go.
467 reviews in total. So the 10-star first, still the best Star Trek film after over 20 years. There have been many Star Trek films. Sorry, I was reading the fucking front of the class. There have been many Star Trek films, but the Wrath of Khan.
But this one is mine. Sorry. It just felt like you were going full Private Parliament.
Yeah. Second to none for thrills, action, and adventure, with the best musical score by James Horner to keep us on the edge of our seat. If you haven't seen this at least 10 times, go and put it on now. The new special edition with previously unreleased footage brings the whole thing together in an even better way. No spoilers, sorry. The regular cast are at their best, but Ricardo Montalban seals the show as Khan, done in true Star Trek tradition. And like the disappointing special effects fest of the first motion picture, this film will go on to be one of the all-time greats of sci-fi.
Big fan, big fan. I
Sounds
don't
like it
think it's
was
one of the
written by
all-time
you.
greats. I think it's a very good Star Trek film, but it falls short of true greatness. But it's a very fun film all the same.
The one Star Trek: The Wrath of Tedium. This movie has it all. Long and repeated shots of spaceship models, tedious dialogue between wooden actors, ridiculous action sequences, absurd science. This was truly awful. The opening 30 minutes are amongst the worst ever released by a major studio. We're talking Showgirls level bad. I found the only reason to hang on till the end was the hope anything would save it. Nothing did. The only surprise here is the franchise survived this absolute stinker. So much of the film relies on the audience's familiarity with the characters and forgiving abominations like the dialogue, the acting, the lack of anything at all happening. Star Trek 4 had at least the interest of time travel and the prime directive on Earth to provide interest and even relate. Fucking hell, why is he split down to 2 words? Relatability, plus a bit of an environmental theme, but there is nothing to redeem this snooze fest. There's not even a deliciousness of watching a truly bad film here, as the absolute tedium destroys even that ironic titillation.
Oof,
I've never known the prime directive be used as a positive thing for anything.
What is the prime directive?
It's not to
talk to people.
Yeah, basically,
it's kind of like their version of it's like the space Magna Carta kind of thing, you know. So it's just like we can do this, we can't do this, all that bollocks. So, but yeah, that is clearly said by someone who's not like a Star Trek fan at all. Because everyone who's not a Star Trek fan, if you speak to someone about Wrath of Khan, they're like, "Oh, I'm not a Star Trek fan." Their first question is that the one with the whales, or I like the one with the whales? Like that's the one that cut through for everyone. Everyone likes the fucking whale one, regardless. But yeah, no, he's like, don't get me wrong, I disagree with the review, but some of the points are valid.
Yeah,
like
the first section of that is quite valid.
Yeah.
If you don't have any connection to the characters, then the battles can feel incredibly one-dimensional. As you said, visually, they're not particularly spectacular. The reason they work is because of your connection to the characters and those interactions. If you think that falls flat, then everything else kind of falls with it. So I understand it. I mean, a bit harsh to say the least, but still. Understandable all the same.
So we go to our scores?
Yeah, ratings and recommendations. So for me, it's a 4 and a yes. If I was going to recommend any Star Trek film to anyone, it would be this one. Although, arguably, if it was someone who had no interest in Star Trek, I'd be like, you should probably watch the fucking whale one, which is fine. It's a fun film, but this is a better movie, make no mistake. So it's a 4 for me. There are some caveats. This does look its age in some respects, and you have to deal with some of the set design, some of the costumes. But I still think it's a wonderfully, despite what that review said, wonderfully acted, wonderfully shot, brilliant script. As I said, it's one of those few films that I grew up and I was like somewhat indifferent towards it. And each time I've watched it, I've liked it a little bit more. So it has its problems, you know, none more so than Khan being a bit of a dum-dum. But 4 stars and a yes from me.
Yeah, 4 stars for me as well. With the recommendation, I think you'd have to have an enjoyment of sci-fi. I tried to get my wife to watch it and give me the one word answer of no.
Yeah,
so
Bethan wouldn't watch it either, in fairness.
So, you know,
I
think if someone likes sci-fi, then, you know, they'll be willing to give it a chance.
Yeah,
obviously, as long as people run fast enough, they'll enjoy it. But no, I think I would.
For me, it's a 2 and it's a no. It just wasn't for me, if I'm honest. Like, I wouldn't go back and watch it again. And this has made me not want to watch any Star Trek film of the originals, not even the one with the whales.
I was going to say, can we watch the whale one over Christmas?
I'd be more inclined to Undiscovered Country.
If it's chosen for the podcast, I have to watch it, don't I? I mean, there's not like a no. We don't have.
This is Star Trek season.
We don't have
not anymore.
Do Home Trek.
We don't have veto power on this, so if he chooses it, I gotta do it. So.
No. I don't. It's like me picking like Mission Impossible. It's like pointless, right? So it's like, yeah, gave Star Trek go, didn't work. I mean, in fairness, like we tried Star Wars multiple times. That was probably the worst thing. It was like, you know, I kept going back to why going, no, this one will convince you. Empire Strikes Back, you like this one, and it just didn't work. So it's like, well, fair enough, I guess. But
he just gets beaten down slowly. Like he was 7 foot tall when we started this, and he just chipped away at him. Bless him. He just doesn't want
my poor soul. So that has been Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Inexplicably, next week is the start of our Christmas season, which seems just fucking outrageous, but it will be December, won't it? So this is going to be our first Christmas film. So you get to pick the first Christmas film of the season.
Yeah, I've had trouble trying to think of Christmas films, and I know Dave, you'll be joining us for one, and I've already got the idea for that one in my head. But I'm trying to think of the other Christmas films I was going to pick, and I've picked the film that is watched at Christmas, but it's next to Christmas.
Christmas adjacent. We can make the argument. We've had this conversation before. There's two. It's like, is Die Hard a Christmas film? It's Christmas adjacent, because you could still. My argument is Die Hard still works completely as Die Hard if it's fucking Hanukkah, if it's Valentine's Day, if it's Halloween. It doesn't matter. The film still fundamentally works if you remove Christmas. Whereas, like, if you have It's a Wonderful Life and you take away Christmas, it doesn't work. If you take away Christmas from Scrooge, it's not a movie. So is Die Hard, if you use that as an example, as the example, is it a Christmas film? It's Christmas adjacent, I would always say, not just a Christmas film, because Christmas isn't essential to the plot. And I know there's a Christmas party, but it could be any fucking party. It doesn't matter. We're not talking about the spirit of Christmas here. So is it in the kind of same vein as Die Hard?
Oh, no. I haven't got action. Okay. The year's 1987.
It feels like we've done a lot of 87. No idea.
The director is John Hughes.
John Hughes, 87. No, Too Late for Breakfast Club. What would come after that?
And I'm
John Candy?
Yeah. I'm attacking. Well, I'm not.
Uncle Buck?
No. Oh, nice try.
No, that's later. That's 89.
I'm going for a travesty because I've never seen this film, so I want
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah.
I said it at the same time. I'm getting.
So no, I've never seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but it's a Thanksgiving movie.
It's good. It's funny.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but when we record this next episode, we are actually recording it on Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
So, and then that in December. So I've gone totally Christmas adjacent. It's like the holiday before for Americans. Holiday before Christmas.
That is stretching the credulity of the term Christmas adjacent. Be like, well, it's a Valentine's film. It's less than 2 months afterwards. It's absolutely fine. But no, I'm willing to go with that. It has a certain kind of vibe. And I would make the argument that, yes, it's for Thanksgiving. But like Home Alone, if you changed it to Christmas, it wouldn't make any difference.
And the other thing, if you put Christmas movies in Google, this comes up as one of the top ones. So
see, when you said it, I was like, I've seen this film plenty of times, but I was like, is it Christmas or fucking, like, if you'd told me it was Christmas, I would have been like, oh yeah, sure. I would have just believed you.
It's the kind of film that I should have watched. So I can't believe it's just passed me by. So I'm really looking forward
I am surprised you haven't seen it, yeah. Well, my memory of it is very positive. Steve Martin, I love John Candy. It'll be interesting to see how it holds up. I mean, comedy is always a tricky one with these things, but I have very fond memories of it. As to whether you're going to find it laugh out loud funny in 2024, I don't know, but I don't think that was ever the point. I think it's more, it has its hijinks and has its moments, but it's a very charming film, like a lot of John Hughes' films. But
I've seen
as I
bits
said,
of
I've not
it
watched it for a
recently,
few years.
and there's not a lot to age in it, really.
Yeah.
So you'll be fine with it.
It's just hijinks and stuff like that. So yeah, it should be good.
We shall see. That's a good choice, though. Good choice. Again, I'm not sure if it's particularly Christmassy, but I think people will get away with it. People like this film, so it'll be absolutely
It's in a Google Christmas list, so I'm sticking with it.
There we go. It's good enough for us. Any other business before we wrap this up?
Yeah, we've had an email off one of our listeners, Rosalind Brown. Now, it's fair play. It's an extensive email, Rosalind, so I'm not going to go through the whole email, bless you, but I am going to pick out some of the good parts for it. So, hi, Rob and Liam. As a fellow Welsh person, I would just like to say I've really enjoyed listening to Hey You Guys podcast. It really makes me laugh and has given me a new perspective on some of the films I used to watch as a child. There were a few films I wanted to mention with my thoughts and opinions. First of all, the film Labyrinth with David Bowie. I loved this film as a child, and I still do as an adult. I thought it was really interesting when you mentioned if there were many Sarahs who had gone on this journey in Labyrinth. Personally think it's only the one Sarah, but I thought the suggestion brought a new perspective to the film. Also, I wonder if the film is about domestic abuse, because it's a strange line David Bowie says toward the end of the film, which is, let me rule you, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave. There are contradictions in this speech, which I think is also manipulative too. She also goes on to say, I enjoyed listening to your Jaws podcast. It is one of my favourite films. I've also read the book too. You are absolutely right about the three main characters in the book not being likable characters. In my opinion, the film is better than the book. There are also several differences between the book and the film. All references to the tiger shark is not in the book. They do not capture a tiger shark, which then misleads the town to think they have caught the real culprit. In the film, they use a real tiger shark. The reason that Hooper stays alive in the film is because of what happened in Australia. Whilst filming, a real shark in Australia got caught around the top of the cage, which is what you see in the film. This was a complete accident. Luckily, the stuntman was not in the cage at the time when the shark got tangled up around the cage. It is because of this incident that Steven Spielberg changed the ending for Hooper to escape. In the book, he gets killed in the cage. The ending is better in the film, and the best scene in the film is Quint talking about the USS Indianapolis. That scene took 2 takes to film. Uh, and then, bless her, she goes on to make recommendations for 1980s, 30s, 60s, 70s. She has really thought about this.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, based on a feedback on Jaws alone, I'm like, Jesus, she should have been on the podcast. She seems to know more about it than we did, in fairness. And the stuff about the labyrinth is really about labyrinth is really interesting as well. And I always think they're the best kind of movies where you can watch them on one level, and it totally works as a movie for kids. But then if you go back to it as an adult, you can totally ask those questions. And even I think we mentioned on the podcast. I mean, we did Labyrinth a while ago. This idea like, is it all just in a head? And it goes a little bit Usual Suspects at the end, Kaiser Soze, when suddenly you look around a room and there's references to everything that happened in the film. And you're like, is she just had a fucking mental breakdown? Maybe she did just lose the baby and she's just lost her fucking mind and she's created this narrative to explain it. So yeah, of course, you don't probably ask that question when you're 10 years old watching Labyrinth for the first time and you're going, oh, these puppets are fucking cool. But watching it as an adult, there's some pretty dark stuff in there. And the further you dig, the darker it gets potentially. So yeah, it's a really interesting film. And I love the fact that you can go back to and watch them in a completely different way. But yeah, Jaws in particular, Jesus Christ, her research is impeccable to say the least.
The last thing I wanted to mention from Rosalind was her top 5 films she'd love to hear from us. So, like I said, she's done a list of, about 30, 40 films she's listed on, Dave. But her top 5 that she'd like us to cover: Troll, the 1983 film starring Liam Neeson.
It's a good shout.
A Few Good Men, starring Tom Cruise.
I'd love to, but...
The
Fugitive, yeah, that's a great shout.
The Shining,
yep, awesome.
And Clue. 1980. We have mentioned about doing Clue in the
Clue. I never watched Clue growing up. I never watched Clue. Shining is one of those weird ones because it feels like, how deep do you want to go into that film? You could turn it into like a 4-hour podcast with ease, and there's been so much said about it. You always worry that you're going to add anything new to it. But I love the book. We're both Stephen King fans. It's almost bizarre that we've never done The Shining in particular.
Yeah, but we've said it before. We said when a film is good, and like we're afraid to go back to Shawshank, because what are we going to really talk about when Shawshank is near perfect? So it's the same with Shining. When Shining is near perfect, there's not much we can.
I mean, we went back to Jaws. I think retrospectively, I look back and be like, it's a perfect movie, and I really enjoyed talking about that. So maybe we
hadn't
should
seen Jaws for a while or anything like that.
Yeah,
we have fond memories. And what I say, you made a dig then when I said Tom Cruise. You're more than welcome to pick Tom Cruise films. I have no problem with you picking.
We've picked. We've only done one Tom Cruise film.
We've done 2.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm tired of defending Tom Cruise. It's just I don't want to do it for a whole fucking movie.
Maybe don't defend him, and we'll just talk about the terrible film he's in.
Oh, see what I mean? I'm just like, nope, we're not doing that. Forget about it.
We did 2. We did Top Gun, and we did.
Oh, we did do Top Gun, didn't we?
Yeah.
Legend. I still can't believe we did Legend. That is one of the weirdest mainstream movies I've ever seen. I cannot believe that was directed by Ridley Scott. It is fucking bananas, that thing.
Dave's just pointed to a sign in his office because we're recording from Dave's office. Cocktails and Dreams. So I think
Cocktail.
I think somebody wants.
I've inexplicably never seen Cocktail.
Oh, no way!
It's crazy.
That's one of the only films I like him in.
I only saw Risky Business. Have you seen Risky Business? That's a fucking weird film. If you go back and watch it, he's really good in that again. But strange film. But Tom Cruise is I think he's a great actor, but he's a unique cinematic presence to say the least, and obviously not for everyone apparently. So that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. But thanks, Rosalind, for the email, and please keep them coming because that list you've sent is extensive.
And that's a really good top 5. As I said, I don't want to speak for Clue, although I'd be more than interested to actually go back and watch that because, as I said, it was just one of those films. It wasn't even like I had that I don't want to see Clue. It was just I remember the poster, but it just never came into my life. I can't remember it being on TV. I can't remember anyone mentioning watching it. I can't remember not wanting to watch it. It just, for some reason, just ships passing in the night. It just didn't come into my orbit. So that was a lot of analogies. But the rest of them, Troll, I definitely want to see that. The Fugitive's almost a bit of a surprise. And I do think we should do The Shining, but that might have to wait until next Wait, is Shining a Christmas film at any point? Does it get close enough to Christmas?
There's
a lot of snow. There's loads of snow. Is there a Christmas tree? It's like, Rambo, First Blood is a Christmas film. When he gets arrested, there's Christmas trees. It's arguably, I mean, I'm not going to lie, my films are a bit of a stretch this year. Not as much as your Thanksgiving film, but I've got a few which are kind of very much Christmas adjacent, to say the least.
If we're doing The Shining, we're doing Shawshank. I've held off on Shawshank because you have said before about...
The Shining takes place over the Christmas holidays.
Does it now?
It does. Oh. There you go.
I have to change my tune. We'll find out next week. But first and foremost, we have to do Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which I am genuinely looking forward to because that is a fun film, which I have a lot of nostalgia for, but a film I've not seen for a while. So if there's nothing else, I've been Liam, he's been Rob, that's been Dave, and you have been listening to the There You Goes podcast. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Hey, you